what do we know right now about the function of the hippocampal circuits? And what I mean by that is, suppose that you had the ability to read and write from 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 neurons. What could you decode? What do we think we could decode based on our understanding today? What do we think we could encode? Is there a mechanistic understanding of those circuits right now, or where are we?
This is through direct hippocampal access?
Yeah.
So you can't cheat and stimulate sensory neurons going into hippocampus or anything like that?
Nope.
So I don't want to talk too much, but I have ideas here. Namely that, if you, to answer the question the way you ask is very difficult, because it already presupposes that we shovel information into the brain, and the brain is there to absorb knowledge. And again, this is a funny way of thinking about it, because this is what's called the tabula rasa idea, that the brain is there as a blank slate and we fill it up with information. And from this perspective, it's very difficult to answer your question.
Because you think of the hippocampus more as this kind of lookup table that points to information in other areas. And so you feel without the understanding of the cortical areas and what's being encoded in the cortical areas, the hippocampus would be a sort of meaningless graph. Is that your position? Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So what you can say instead that, the hippocampus is part of the brain, is already there, and it can generate enormous amount of sequences. Even a rat hippocampus can generate many, many sequences, but the richness of the hippocampus is not in the hippocampus, but it's in the reader. Yeah. The same sequence can be read out by 5 different ways, and this is why the neocortex is so enormous, much bigger in the human than in the rodent, because the job of the neocortex is to observe and suck out that information that exists there. So instead of thinking that how we generate sequences, you can say that the fundamental goal of the brain, or the fundamental task of the brain, is maintain its own dynamic. And whenever we learn something or not, it doesn't change the dynamic. The dynamic should stay and does stay pretty much the same. So learning is not making the brain or hippocampus much more complicated, but as a kind of a lookup table, as you said. And then we can choose any of these lookup sequences and link it to something interesting that happened out there. So learning to me is more like a matching process rather than a building from brick by brick a new house.
So I think, what this makes me think of is the difficulty of writing a new memory into the brain, which might have been, I think it's certainly in the popular psyche right now that, people who are building these memory prosthetics are able to write memories into the brain. And I think Yuri's pointing out that the difficulties of doing that, at least from a hippocampal perspective. You might need, electrodes in sensory cortex in order to do this. But there is an element, a fundamental process of the hippocampus is the theta rhythm. And this is thought to underlie associative information processing, not only in the brain, but also, and with the, not only in the hippocampus, but also in the larger brain networks and the interactions between hippocampus and neocortex. And it could provide a kind of a physiological mechanism that supports distributed cellular activity, synchronized activity, and allows a communication channel between neocortex and hippocampus. And so one possibility, and it doesn't require tens of thousands of microelectrodes, maybe perhaps just a few macroelectrodes. But one possibility, very intriguing, is to magnify learning by modulating these fundamental mechanisms, such as the theta rhythm in the hippocampus and elsewhere. getting at, rather than, a more specific detail of a memory, rather than, writing in details of a memory, but rather amplifying the learning process itself.